This is Claire Morrison, a brilliant young doctor stepping into a world she's always dreamed of. And this is Alex Vance, a man with a fearsome reputation and a heart bolted shut. She breaks the rules. He sets the boundaries. But what happens when two opposite worlds collide in the sterile corridors of the Royal Melbourne Hospital, where every heartbeat could change everything? Get ready for a story so intense, so full of secrets, tension, and a plot twist no one saw coming, it'll leave you breathless. The crisp Melbourne morning air carried that unmistakable mix of fresh roasted coffee and unwritten possibilities that only a big city can offer. Claire Morrison adjusted the cuffs of her white coat for the third time, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she stared up at the imposing glass and steel facade of the Royal Melbourne Hospital. At just 26, she'd landed the most prestigious cardiothoracic surgical residency in the country, a feat many doctors spend decades chasing. Steady, Claire. It's just another day, another hospital, another intimidating boss, she told herself, though her heart was thumping a proper little drum solo in her chest. Her hazel eyes scanned the building while a gentle breeze tugged at the brown curls she'd attempted to tame in a professional bun. The hospital lift was a tiny world of contained tension. Claire found herself squashed in there with two nurses, their whispers barely audible but absolutely buzzing with gossip. "Did you see Dr. Vance this morning?" one muttered. "He's in a bloody awful mood. Feels sorry for the new resident." The other replied, "Oh yeah, I heard the last one only lasted 2 months. The bloke's an absolute ice block. They call him Dr. Heartbreaker, you know, and not 'cause of his surgical skills, mind you." Claire felt a sudden mix of indignation and morbid curiosity. "Dr. Heartbreaker? Seriously?" Her eyebrows shot up without her permission. "That's pathetic," she blurted out, unable to hold her tongue. "A surgeon who hides behind a cold facade because he's probably too scared to show any real emotion. I bet he's one of those blokes who reckons being cruel makes him look important." The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a scalpel. The two nurses stared at her in utter horror, their faces white as if they'd just seen a ghost. Claire frowned, asking herself, what's their problem? That's when she felt a presence behind her, an energy so intense it seemed to change the temperature of the tiny space. She turned slowly and found herself face to face with the most piercing eyes she'd ever seen, a stormy gray framed by dark eyebrows that were now raised with a mix of surprise and a dangerously amused look. The man was tall, imposing, with slightly wavy dark hair and a jawline that looked like it was carved from marble. He wore a pristine white coat and had a stethoscope draped around his neck like a king's crown. "An interesting theory, Doctor." His voice was low and controlled, a hint of something unidentifiable making every word sound like velvet over steel. "Morrison, I presume?" Bugger, bugger, bugger. Claire felt the lift floor turn into quicksand. A blush spread across her cheeks that she hoped wasn't as obvious as it felt. "Dr. Vance," she managed to articulate, extending her hand with more confidence than she truly felt. "Claire Morrison, it's a pleasure to meet you." Alex looked at her outstretched hand for an eternity before shaking it. The contact was brief but electric, and Claire couldn't help but notice how warm his hands were, so different from the coldness radiating from his gaze. Did she just call me pathetic? Alex thought, feeling a mixture of irritation and something else he couldn't quite put his finger on. He'd heard every word from the moment he'd stepped into the lift 2 floors back, and for some reason, the familiar wave of anger that usually hit him when someone dared to judge him was absent. In its place, he felt a flicker of intrigue. Dr. Morrison had guts, that was for sure, and she also had eyes that seemed to challenge him, even as her face turned the color of his Nan's rose garden. "The pleasure's all mine, Doctor," he replied, keeping his voice carefully neutral. "I hope your clinical insight is as sharp as your personal observations." Did he just politely insult me? Claire wondered, a spark of irritation mixed with reluctant admiration. Two can play at this game. "Oh, you can be sure of that, Doctor. My ability to diagnose goes far beyond superficial appearances." The elevator's ding interrupted the moment, and the doors slid open to reveal the chaotic world of the cardiothoracic department. The nurses practically bolted, leaving a silence charged with electricity. "Follow me," Alex commanded, his tone now purely professional. "Your first surgery starts in an hour, and I've got a feeling you're going to need all that time to prepare." As they walked the white, unforgiving hallways of the hospital, Claire couldn't help but notice how all the staff subtly moved out of Dr. Vance's way. It wasn't exactly fear, it was more like respect laced with caution, as if he were a force of nature best left undisturbed. So this is the famous Dr. Heartbreaker, she thought, keeping pace with his long strides. Let's see how cold he can really stay when he finds out I'm not so easily intimidated. Unbeknownst to them both, they had just started a battle that would change their lives forever. The first week at Royal Melbourne had been exactly what Claire expected. Intense, challenging, and filled with moments that made her question if she'd chosen the right career. What she didn't expect was that Dr. Alex Vance would be even more relentless than she'd imagined. For 5 days straight, he'd managed to make her feel like a first-year med student, not the competent doctor who'd graduated summa cum laude. Every diagnosis was questioned, every procedure scrutinized with a surgical precision that left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. The arrogant bastard, she thought, walking towards her new apartment in the trendy inner-city suburb of Fitzroy. She'd found a small but cozy place in a historic block that had been recently renovated, and while the rent ate up a good chunk of her residence salary, the location was perfect. Claire climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, her legs protesting after the long day, and stopped in front of apartment 3B. Just as she was fumbling in her bag for her keys, she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the stairs. "Please don't be some chatty neighbor," she mentally pleaded. "All I want is a hot shower and a glass of red." The footsteps stopped right beside her, and Claire felt that familiar sense that the universe had a twisted sense of humor. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, turning around slowly. Alex Vance was standing in front of apartment 3A, keys in hand, with a look that wavered between shock and a poorly hidden amusement. He was wearing a navy blue shirt that made his gray eyes look almost blue in the hallway light, and his sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms Claire hadn't noticed under his scrubs. "Seriously, of all the apartments in Melbourne, you have to live right next to mine, Dr. Morrison," he said, that controlled voice she'd come to know so well. "What an interesting coincidence." "Interesting isn't the word I'd use," Claire shot back, finally finding her keys. "More like a cruel joke from the universe." Alex couldn't help the slight smile that tugged at the corner of his mouth. All week, he'd watched as Dr. Morrison managed to hold her composure and answer every one of his challenges with a mix of professionalism and a fiery spirit he found strangely stimulating. Very few people ever dared to stand up to him, and even fewer did it with her combination of intelligence and cheek. "Why do I feel like I've just won the lottery and been hit by lightning at the same time?" he wondered, watching her struggle with the seemingly stubborn lock. "Need a hand?" he offered, unable to resist. Claire shot him a look that could have melted an iceberg. "With what? With opening my own door? I reckon I can handle a simple lock, doctor. Unlike some people, I don't need constant supervision for basic tasks." Touché, Alex thought, a jolt of reluctant respect hitting him. Definitely not an easy one. "It was just a friendly offer between neighbors," he said, opening his own door with fluid movements. "Though I see you prefer absolute independence." The lock finally gave way, and Claire pushed her door open with more force than necessary. "Independence is underrated," she muttered, "especially when you live next door to someone who already makes your life a misery 8 hours a day." "A misery, is that what you think?" Alex felt a pang of something he didn't want to identify. For years, he'd carefully built his reputation for being demanding and relentless. It was his way of keeping distance, of making sure no one got close enough to matter. But something about Claire Morrison made those familiar barriers feel uncomfortable, like a suit that no longer fit. "Doctor," he called out before she could close the door. Claire stopped, her hand on the doorknob, and looked back at him over her shoulder. "Yeah?" For a moment, Alex didn't know what to say. There was something in the way the hallway light caught her wild curls, in how her hazel eyes challenged him, even in her obvious exhaustion, that made the words stick in his throat. "What's happening to me?" "Nothing," he finally said. "Have a good night." Claire studied him for a moment longer, as if she could see right through his carefully constructed facade. "You too, doctor," she replied softly and closed the door. Alex stood in the hallway for several minutes, staring at the closed door and wondering when exactly he'd lost control of the situation. From the moment he'd heard her in the lift, something had shifted. Claire Morrison hadn't just challenged his professional authority. She'd woken up something in him that he'd kept carefully buried for years. On the other side of the wall, Claire slumped against the door, her heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with tiredness. There was something in the way Alex had looked at her in the hallway, a fleeting vulnerability that had surfaced for a moment before his cold mask snapped back into place. "Why do I feel like I just saw the real man behind the Dr. Heartbreaker moniker?" She made her way to the small but efficient kitchen, pouring herself a glass of red wine as she processed the day's events. Her apartment was cozy, decorated with warm tones and plants she'd managed to keep alive despite her insane schedule. It was her sanctuary, her safe space, or at least it had been until 5 minutes ago. The sound of running water in the apartment next door made her acutely aware that Alex Vance was literally a few meters away, separated only by a brick wall. The image of him in the shower popped into her mind uninvited, and Claire nearly choked on her wine. What am I thinking? He's my boss. He's arrogant. He's impossible. But as she got ready for her own shower, she couldn't help but wonder what secrets the man who had built such tall walls around himself was hiding. And why, despite all his professional coldness, were there moments when he seemed to be studying her with a breathtaking intensity? On the other side of the wall, Alex found himself asking the very same questions. 3 weeks had passed since the awkward discovery that they were neighbors, and the tension at the hospital had reached levels even the veteran nurses were commenting on in whispers. Claire had developed an almost military-like routine to avoid running into Alex in their building's hallway, timing her departures and arrivals with surgical precision. At the hospital, however, there was no escaping him. "The patient in room 304 presents with an inconsistent clinical picture," Alex announced during morning rounds, his voice echoing through the corridor as the group of residents and nurses followed him like a medical procession. "Intermittent chest pain, mild dyspnoea, but preliminary tests show no obvious anomalies." Claire reviewed the medical history on her tablet, her brows furrowed in concentration. Something wasn't right, a missing piece of the puzzle everyone seemed to be overlooking. The symptoms are subtle, but there's a pattern, she thought, remembering a similar case she'd studied during her residency in Brisbane. "If it's what I think it is, Dr. Vance," she interrupted, looking up from her tablet, "has anyone considered the possibility of a subsegmental pulmonary embolism? The symptoms are atypical, but given the patient's history of long-haul flights and the slight D-dimer elevation I'm seeing here..." The group came to a dead stop. Alex turned slowly towards her, his gray eyes studying her with an intensity that made Claire feel as if she were under a microscope. A subsegmental pulmonary embolism? Alex felt a jolt of surprise, annoyance, admiration. It was exactly the diagnosis he'd been considering, but had decided to discard because of the subtlety of the symptoms. "An interesting hypothesis, Dr. Morrison," he said, maintaining his neutral tone, though he felt an internal wave of something he refused to identify as pride. "And what study protocol do you suggest to confirm your hunch?" Claire refused to be intimidated by the slightly condescending tone. Instead, she straightened up and met his gaze directly. "A high-resolution pulmonary CT angiogram, focusing on the posterior basal segments. And if my suspicions are correct, we'll probably find a small clot that would perfectly explain the patient's symptoms." A tense silence filled the hallway. The other residents exchanged nervous glances, as if they were witnessing a medical duel in real time. Alex studied her for a moment longer than necessary, noting how her cheeks had flushed slightly, but her eyes remained firm and defiant. There was something in her posture, in the way she held her ground without arrogance, but with a quiet confidence that ignited a mixture of respect and irritation in him. When was the last time someone challenged me with such poise? All right, he conceded finally. Order the study. If you're wrong, Dr. Morrison, you'll be responsible for explaining to a 70-year-old man and his family why we subjected him to unnecessary radiation. And if I'm right, Claire countered without missing a beat, that 70-year-old man will get to see his grandkids grow up. Touché, Alex thought, a smile threatening to appear on his lips. Definitely not an easy one. 2 hours later, Claire was in front of the radiologist's screen, her heart thumping with anticipation as the CT images appeared one after another. There it is, Dr. Hammond, the chief radiologist murmured, pointing at a small shadow on the screen. A subsegmental pulmonary embolism, exactly where you predicted. It's subtle, but it's definitely there. Claire felt a wave of satisfaction and relief. It wasn't just that she'd been right. It was that she had trusted her medical gut despite the pressure. Take that, Dr. Heartbreaker. When she returned to the cardiothoracic department, she found Alex reviewing other patient files in his office. The door was open, and he looked up as he felt her approach. Well, he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Subsegmental pulmonary embolism in the right posterior basal segment, Claire reported, keeping her voice professional but unable to completely hide the satisfaction in her eyes. The patient is already on anticoagulants. Alex nodded slowly, dropping his pen onto the desk. For a moment he simply watched her, and Claire felt as if she could see gears turning in his mind. She's brilliant, he admitted to himself, feeling a mix of professional pride and something more personal that he chose not to examine too closely. Not just smart, but intuitive. That's a dangerous combination. Good work, doctor, he said finally, and though the words were simple, there was something in his tone that made Claire feel as if she'd just won the Nobel Prize for medicine. Thanks, she replied, feeling her cheeks flush slightly. Does this mean you might trust my clinical judgment a little more? Alex leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since they'd met, Claire saw something that looked like a real smile curve his lips. It means you're more observant than I initially thought, he admitted. But don't get cocky, Morrison. One correct diagnosis doesn't mean you're ready to operate solo. Did he just almost smile at me? Claire felt the ground beneath her feet shift. Dr. Heartbreaker had just shown a crack in his armor, and she wasn't sure what to do with that information. Of course not, doctor, she said with a mischievous smile, but maybe it means I'm not the incompetent doctor you seemed to think I was. I never thought you were incompetent, Alex countered, getting up from his chair with that natural grace he seemed to possess. Impulsive, reckless, too sure of yourself. Yes, but never incompetent. Claire felt a strange warmth expand in her chest. Was that a compliment from Dr. Heartbreaker? I suppose that's something, she mumbled. It's more than most people get from me, he admitted, and there was something in his voice that made Claire look at him more and more closely. For a moment, the air in the office seemed to thicken, charged with something neither of them was ready to name. Claire found herself noticing details she'd tried to ignore, the way his gray eyes softened when he let his guard down, how his dark hair curled slightly at his temples, the way his hands moved with surgical precision in even the simplest gestures. What's happening to me? The alarm on her pager broke the moment, and Claire was grateful for the interruption. I've got to go, she said, backing towards the door. Patient in room 208 needs a pre-op review. Claire, he called out as she reached the door. She stopped, startled by the use of her first name. Good work today, he repeated, but this time there was something warmer in his voice. Claire simply nodded, not trusting her own voice, and hurried away, her heart beating in a way that had nothing to do with medicine. In his office, Alex stood staring at the empty space she had occupied, wondering when exactly Claire Morrison had started to matter more than was professionally appropriate. Saturday morning found Claire at the local supermarket, lazily pushing a trolley as she tried to remember if she had any eggs at home. Weekends were her sanctuary, the only hours she could pretend to be a normal person with a normal life, not a cardiothoracic resident living on 4 hours of sleep and IV caffeine. She was wearing a pair of old jeans, a white t-shirt, and her hair was in a messy bun. Without makeup and with her sunglasses pushed up on her head, she felt completely relaxed for the first time in weeks. At least until she rounded the dairy aisle corner and bumped directly into a trolley coming in the opposite direction. "Oh, sorry, mate, I wasn't—" She began to apologize, but the words died in her throat when she looked up. Alex Vance was standing on the other side of the trolley, but this wasn't the relentless, perfectly dressed Dr. Vance she knew. This man was wearing a gray t-shirt that fit his torso in a way Claire hadn't noticed under his scrubs, dark jeans that fit him ridiculously well, and his hair was tousled as if he'd just run his fingers through it. My God, how is it possible that he looks even better without the intimidating doctor getup? "Doctor," he said, and there was something different in his voice. Softer, less formal. "Shopping on a Saturday morning as well." "Claire," she corrected automatically, surprising herself. "Outside the hospital, I'm just Claire." Alex felt a strange feeling in his chest at hearing her name on her own lips. Claire, no titles, no professional barriers, just her. "Alex," he replied, and it was the first time she'd heard his first name directly from him. Alex. The name suited him better than Dr. Vance. More human, more real. Claire looked into his trolley almost instinctively, and she couldn't help but smile. It was filled with staples: milk, bread, eggs, some veggies, and what looked like an excessive amount of ground coffee. "Do you live on coffee alone?" she asked, pointing at the multiple bags. Alex followed her gaze and felt his cheeks flush slightly. "When was the last time I blushed?" "It's medicinal," he mumbled, "to maintain brain function during 12-hour surgeries." "Ah," Claire nodded with mock seriousness. "Of course. Preventative treatment against sleep deprivation-induced neurological collapse. Are you taking the mickey out of me?" Alex studied her, noting the playful glint in her eyes. It was so different to see her like this, relaxed and playful, away from the tension of the hospital. "Exactly," he replied, playing along. "It's a very strict medical protocol." Claire laughed, a warm, genuine sound that made something in Alex's chest squeeze in a completely unexpected way. "When was the last time I made someone laugh like that?" "And what about you?" he asked, looking at her trolley. "Yogurt, fruit, vegetables, some chocolate hidden at the bottom there?" Claire looked down, and sure enough, there was a block of dark chocolate tucked amongst the apples. "It's for medical emergencies," she defended, using his own logic. "Dark chocolate has antioxidants. It's practically preventative medicine." "Of course," he agreed solemnly. "Standard preventative cardiology protocol." They stood there smiling at each other for a moment that felt suspended in time. Claire realized it was the first time she'd seen a real smile on Alex's face. Not the controlled, professional smirk from the hospital, but something genuine that completely transformed his face. He's beautiful when he really smiles. "You know what's pathetic?" Alex said suddenly, surprising even himself with his honesty. "I have no idea how to cook half the things in my trolley." Claire looked at him with genuine surprise. "Seriously? The brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon can't even make scrambled eggs?" "I can do open-heart surgery, but I managed to burn water," he admitted, and there was something vulnerable in his confession that made Claire's heart clench. When was the last time someone took care of this man? "That's tragic," she said softly. "How do you survive?" "Takeaway, lots of takeaway." "And coffee?" "Heaps of coffee." Claire studied him for a moment, seeing for the first time the man behind the doctor. Lonely, a workaholic, probably poorly nourished and sleeping less than he should. "He's so different from what I thought." "You know what?" she said impulsively. "I'm a decent cook. If you ever want to learn how to make something more sophisticated than burnt water, I live in 3B. I just invited Dr. Heartbreaker to my apartment to teach him how to cook. What is wrong with me? Alex looked at her as if she'd just offered to solve one of the universe's great mysteries. Would you do that? He asked, and there was genuine surprise in his voice. Even though I've been difficult with you at the hospital? Maybe, Claire replied, feeling her cheeks flush, but only if you promise not to critique my vegetable chopping technique with the same intensity as you critique my differential diagnoses. Why do I want to say yes more than anything in the world? Deal, Alex said, extending his hand. But I have to warn you, I'm a terrible student when it comes to things that don't involve scalpels. Claire shook his hand, noticing again how warm they were, how firm his grip was. I reckon I can handle a challenge, she replied. They stood there with their hands clasped for a moment longer than necessary, both of them feeling as if something fundamental had just shifted between them. They were no longer just the demanding mentor and the challenging resident. They were Alex and Claire, two lonely people who had just found an unexpected connection in the dairy aisle of a supermarket. What's happening here? Claire asked herself, feeling her pulse quicken. Why do I feel like I just found something I didn't even know I was looking for? Alex wondered the exact same thing. When they finally let go of each other's hands, they both felt the loss of contact in a way neither of them was ready to analyze too deeply. Well, Claire mumbled, I guess I'll see you around the building. I guess so, Alex replied. As they walked away in opposite directions, both felt as if they had just crossed an invisible line, and neither was completely sure if they had made a wonderful mistake or just a mistake. A week after the supermarket encounter, Claire found herself anxiously standing in front of her bathroom mirror, changing her blouse for the third time. Why am I so nervous? It's just a cooking lesson. It's just Alex. It's just... The doorbell rang exactly at 7, interrupting her panicked thoughts. Claire smoothed down the cream blouse she had finally settled on and went to open the door. Alex was standing in the hallway carrying a bottle of red wine and what looked like a genuinely nervous smile. Without his scrubs, dressed in a white long-sleeved shirt with the sleeves rolled up and dark trousers, he looked younger, more approachable. I hope the wine's all right, he said, offering her the bottle. I'll admit I know more about sutures than pairings. Claire took the bottle, her fingers brushing his briefly. It's perfect, she murmured, feeling that familiar heat that seemed to ignite every time they touched. Come in, please. Alex stepped into the apartment and stopped, looking around with genuine curiosity. It was warm and inviting, with medical books mixed with novels on the shelves, plants that clearly received loving care, and photos of what looked like family and friends smiling from various frames. It's so different from my apartment, he thought, remembering his own minimalist, almost clinical space. This feels like a home. Your apartment is beautiful, he commented. It feels very you. Claire felt her cheeks flush at the unexpectedly intimate compliment. Thanks. I just invited myself to his apartment. What's wrong with me tonight? I'm not sure you want to see my decorating style, Alex replied with a shy smile. I think extreme minimalism would be a generous description. Claire laughed as she led him towards the kitchen. Well, tonight we're going to start with something simple. Pasta with fresh tomato and basil sauce, something you can't easily burn. So little faith in my culinary skills? Alex asked, feigning offense. You said you burn water, Claire reminded him, pulling out the ingredients. So yes, very little faith. When was the last time I bantered with someone like this? Alex asked himself, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. At the hospital, everything was serious, professional, controlled. Here, with Claire moving around her kitchen with that natural grace, he felt as if he could finally breathe after years of holding his breath. All right, he said, rolling up his sleeves. What's the first step, Chef Morrison? Claire felt a pang of something dangerously close to affection at seeing him so willing to learn, so different from the authoritative doctor she knew. First, we wash and chop the tomatoes, she explained, putting several ripe tomatoes on the bench. The key is the cutting technique. Have you ever used a kitchen knife? Only scalpels, Alex joked, taking the knife she offered him. How different can it be? 20 minutes later, Claire was trying not to laugh as she watched Alex struggle with the concept of uniform cubes. "No, no, no," she said, stepping up behind him. "Not like that. Let me show you." She positioned herself behind him, her arms wrapping around his to guide his hands on the knife. The contact was electric, and Claire felt as if every nerve ending in her body had suddenly woken up. Why does he smell so good? Is it cologne or just him? Alex stood completely still, aware of every point where Claire's body touched his. Her hair tickled his cheek, and he could feel her warm breath on his neck. What's happening to me? Why do I feel like I'm about to lose control? The key is the rocking motion, Claire murmured, her voice a little huskier than usual. You use the tip of the knife as a pivot point, and you let the blade do the work. Her hands guided his in the motion, and gradually, the tomatoes began to fall into more uniform cubes. "See," she whispered, "you just need to find the rhythm." Alex turned his head slightly, and suddenly their faces were mere centimeters apart. Claire's eyes widened, and he could see little gold flecks in her hazel irises. When did I start memorizing her face? The world seemed to slow down. Claire was conscious of everything, the heat of his body behind her, the way his muscles tensed when she got close, the way his gray eyes had darkened as he looked at her. He's going to kiss me, she thought, feeling her heart rate soar, and I think I want him to. The sound of the water boiling startled them both, popping the moment like a balloon. Claire quickly pulled away, her cheeks on fire. "The pasta," she mumbled, heading for the stove. It's going to get overcooked." Alex stood by the counter, the knife still in his hands, wondering what the hell had just happened. His heart was hammering as if he'd just run a marathon, and every fiber of his being wanted to close the distance Claire had just put between them. Was I going to kiss her? In her kitchen, while she taught me how to chop tomatoes? The next few minutes were a careful ballet of avoiding direct eye contact as they finished preparing dinner, but the tension had changed, thickening until it was almost tangible. When they finally sat down to eat, the wine had helped to relax the atmosphere a little, but there was a new awareness between them that hadn't been there before. "This is delicious," Alex said after the first bite. "I can't believe I actually helped make this." "You're a fast learner," Claire replied, taking a sip of wine, "for someone who burns water." "I had a good teacher," he countered, and there was something in his tone that made Claire look at him more and more closely. Their eyes met across the table, and again that electricity crackled between them. What's happening here? When did Alex Vance stop being my intimidating boss and become this? "Alex," she began, not sure what she wanted to say. "Yeah? Do you ever get the feeling that everything is changing so fast?" He studied her for a long moment, and she could see something vulnerable in his eyes. "All the time," he admitted softly, "especially since a certain doctor called me pathetic in a lift." Claire laughed, and the tension eased slightly. "I can't believe you're still miffed about that." "I'm not miffed," Alex replied. "I'm intrigued." The way he said the word intrigued made something clench in Claire's stomach. Intrigued by what? By me? They spent the rest of the dinner talking about everything and nothing. Stories from med school, embarrassing anecdotes from their first years as residents, their families, their dreams. For the first time, Claire saw the man behind the title, the Alex who existed when he didn't have to be Dr. Heartbreaker. And for the first time, Alex allowed himself to be just himself, with someone else, without the carefully constructed barriers he kept between himself and the rest of the world. When it was time for him to leave, both of them felt a strange reluctance to end the night. "Thanks," Alex said at the door, "not just for dinner, but for this, whatever this is." Claire felt her heart flutter at his words. "You're welcome," she murmured. Maybe we can do it again sometime." "I'd like that," he replied, and the sincerity in his voice made Claire feel as if she were melting. They stood on the threshold for a moment longer, neither wanting to be the first to break the connection. Finally, Alex leaned in and kissed her softly on the cheek, a gesture so gentle it made Claire feel as if she'd received an electric shock. "Good night, Claire," he murmured against her skin. "Good night, Alex," she whispered back. When he was gone, Claire stood against the closed door, touching the cheek where he had kissed her, wondering when exactly she had started to fall for Alex Vance. And on the other side of the wall, Alex found himself asking the exact same question. The following week at the hospital was an exquisite torment of stolen moments and contained tension. At the hospital, Claire and Alex maintained their professionalism with military-like precision, but there was a new awareness between them that was impossible to ignore. An accidental brush of hands as they passed files, a look that lasted a second longer than was professionally appropriate. The sound of their first names on each other's lips that now carried a completely different weight. Claire was reviewing patient histories in the break room when Nurse Pam sat down next to her with a look of barely contained curiosity. "Can I ask you something, Doctor?" Pam whispered, looking around to make sure they were alone. "Of course," Claire replied, though something in Pam's tone told her she wasn't going to like the question. "Is there something going on between you and Dr. Vance?" Claire felt as if she'd just been doused with cold water. "What? No, of course not. Why would you ask that?" Pam studied her with the wisdom of someone who'd worked in hospitals for 20 years. "It's just the way he looks at you lately, and you at him. It's different." "Is it that obvious?" Claire felt a panic rise in her chest. "Can everyone see it?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied. "Dr. Vance is my supervisor, nothing more." Pam nodded slowly, but Claire could see she wasn't convinced. "Right, just be careful, yeah? Hospitals are small places and rumors travel fast." After Pam left, Claire sat there with the unread medical file in her hands, feeling as if the world had suddenly become a lot more complicated. What am I doing? What am I thinking? That afternoon, while they were performing a minor surgery together, Claire was hyper-aware of Alex's every move. The way his hands moved with surgical precision, how his voice remained calm and controlled even in the most tense moments. "Scalpel," he requested, and when Claire passed it to him, their fingers brushed for a moment. The contact was so brief that anyone would have considered it accidental, but Claire felt that familiar electric jolt run up her arm. Did he feel that too? She wondered, looking at his face for a reaction. Alex kept his eyes fixed on the patient, but Claire could see the tension in his jaw, the almost imperceptible way his shoulders had stiffened. He definitely felt it. After the surgery, as they scrubbed out in silence, the tension was so thick, Claire could have practically cut it with a scalpel. "Claire," Alex murmured when they were alone. She looked up, meeting his gray eyes in the mirror above the sink. "Yeah?" For a moment, he seemed to be wrestling with something internal. His hands stopped in the process of drying, and Claire could see a vulnerability in his expression that made her hold her breath. Are you all right?" he asked finally. "You seemed distracted during the surgery." "Distracted? Yeah, by you," Claire thought, but aloud she said, "I'm fine, just tired." Alex studied her for a moment longer, and Claire had the feeling he could see right through her lie. Why does this feel so complicated? Why can't I just tell him how I feel? "If you need to talk about anything," he offered, his voice softer than usual, "you know where to find me." Claire felt her heart flutter at the implicit offer. Is he telling me I can go to his apartment, that we can really talk? "Thanks," she murmured. "I'll keep that in mind." That night, Claire stood in front of apartment 3A's door for a full 10 minutes, her hand raised to knock but not daring to. What am I going to say? "Hey, Alex, I can't stop thinking about you and it's driving me mad." Finally, she gathered enough courage to knock softly. The door opened almost immediately, as if he'd been waiting on the other side. Alex was dressed casually in jeans and a gray t-shirt, his hair ruffled as if he'd run his hands through it. "Claire," he said, and there was surprise and something else in his voice. "Is everything all right?" She began, but suddenly she didn't know what to say. How could she explain that every moment they spent together made her want more, that she had started to question everything she thought she knew about love and attraction? "Want to come in?" he offered, stepping aside to let her in. Claire entered his apartment and immediately understood what he'd meant by extreme minimalism. It was beautiful but sterile, modern furniture in neutral tones, white walls that were practically empty, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. It's as if he doesn't really live here, she thought, as if it's just a place he sleeps between surgeries. Coffee, Alex offered. It's pretty much the only thing I know how to make. Yeah, thanks, Claire replied, sitting on the gray leather sofa. As he made the coffee, Claire watched him move around the kitchen with that economical grace she'd come to associate with him, but there was something different tonight, a tension in his movements that suggested he was just as affected by her presence as she was by his. What did you want to talk about? He asked when he returned with 2 steaming mugs. Claire took the mug, grateful for something to do with her hands. Alex, she began, then stopped. Do you ever feel like something is changing between us? He stood completely still, his mug halfway to his lips. What do you mean? Claire looked him directly in the eyes, gathering all her courage. I mean that I can't pretend you're just my supervisor anymore. I mean that I think about you when I'm not at the hospital. I mean that the night we cooked together, I thought you were going to kiss me, and a part of me wished you would. The silence that followed was so intense, Claire could hear her own heart pounding in her ears. Alex set his mug down on the table with hands that weren't completely steady. Claire, his voice was hoarse, you can't say things like that. Why not? She challenged him. Because you're my boss, because you have rules about not getting involved with colleagues, because... He got up abruptly, starting to pace back and forth. Because I do have rules, and I have them for good reasons. Because every time I look at you, I want to forget all those rules, he thought. But he couldn't say that out loud. Claire got up too, frustrated by his evasion. And what are those reasons? Are they really about professionalism, or are they because you're scared? Alex stopped dead in his tracks, turning to her with eyes that flashed dangerously. Scared? Of what? Of feeling something real, Claire answered, stepping closer to him. Of letting someone get close enough to matter. Too close, Alex thought, feeling all his defenses begin to crumble. She's too close to the truth. You don't know what you're talking about, he mumbled, but his voice lacked conviction. Don't I? Claire was now close enough to touch his chest with her hand. Then look me in the eyes and tell me you feel nothing. Tell me I'm just another resident to you. Alex looked at her, and Claire could see the battle raging in his gray eyes. Vulnerability versus control. Desire versus duty. The man versus the doctor. For a moment she thought he would lean in, that he would close the distance between them and finally admit what they'd both been feeling. Instead, he took a step back. I think you should go, he said, his voice returning to that professional coldness Claire had come to despise. The words hit her like a physical blow. Claire felt tears welling behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Of course, she murmured. How silly of me to think Dr. Heartbreaker could be capable of feeling anything real. She headed for the door, but before opening it, she turned one last time. You know what, Alex? You're right to be scared, because if you ever let yourself feel something, you might find out that you're not as invincible as you think. And with that, she was gone, leaving Alex alone in his sterile apartment, wondering why doing the right thing felt like the biggest mistake of his life. The next few days were a living hell of forced professional courtesy. Claire held her head high, her answers clipped and professional, but Alex could see the hurt in her eyes every time she looked at him, and that hurt was slowly killing him. Why did I do that? He asked himself every night, staring at the ceiling of his empty apartment. Why did I push her away when all I wanted was to hold her and tell her she was right? But he knew the answer. Fear was stronger than desire, the rules safer than feelings. Or at least, that's what he'd told himself for years. On Thursday morning, everything changed. Dr. Vance, Nurse Mason yelled from the end of the hall. Emergency in OR 3, male patient 52, massive infarction. Alex and Claire ran towards the operating theater, their personal animosity temporarily suspended by medical adrenaline. In moments like these, they were simply what they were, Two exceptional doctors working to save a life. Patient status, Alex asked as he quickly scrubbed in. Michael Henderson, tradesman, father of three, the nurse reported. His wife is in the waiting room, arrived 10 minutes ago in cardiac arrest. We managed to resuscitate him, but he's critical, Claire finished, checking the monitors. Alex, look at these values. He's going to need an immediate bypass. It was the first time in days she had used his first name, and Alex felt something loosen in his chest. You're right, he murmured. Prep the OR for emergency surgery. The next 3 hours were an intense battle against time and death. Claire assisted with a precision and intuition that reminded Alex why he'd been so impressed with her from the beginning. She was more than just competent, she was exceptional. Suction here, he requested, and she anticipated his move. Pressure dropping, Claire announced, 80/50. Increase the norepinephrine. And Claire, yeah, good work, he mumbled without looking up from the patient's exposed heart. Claire felt a warmth spread through her chest, despite everything that had happened between them. We're good together, she thought, watching how their movements complemented each other perfectly. In this at least, we're perfect together. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the vitals stabilized. We did it, Alex sighed, his shoulders slumping with relief. He's going to live. Claire smiled for the first time in days, a genuine smile that completely transformed her face. He's going to get to see his kids grow up, she murmured, wiping sweat from her forehead. As they closed the patient up, they worked in companionable silence, the personal tension temporarily replaced by the shared satisfaction of a job well done. It was when they were leaving the OR that everything fell apart. Dr. Morrison, Dr. Mackenzie's voice, the head of cardiology, boomed down the hallway. Can I have a word with you? Claire exchanged a nervous glance with Alex before following Dr. Mackenzie to his office. This can't be good, Alex thought, a cold premonition settling in his stomach. 15 minutes later, Claire walked out of the office, her face pale and her eyes bright with unshed tears. She walked right past Alex without looking at him, heading straight for the exit. Claire, wait, he called, running after her. No, she replied without stopping. Not now, Alex. But he caught up with her in the car park, gently taking her arm to turn her towards him. What happened? What did Mackenzie say? Claire looked at him with eyes that burned with pain and anger. What did he say? Her voice trembled. He told me that rumors have reached his ears about my inappropriate professional conduct, that maybe it would be better if I considered a transfer to another department. Alex's blood turned to ice. What? Apparently someone suggested that my closeness with my supervisor might be compromising my medical judgment, Claire continued, the tears finally overflowing. Can you believe that? After what we just did in there, after we saved that man's life. No, Alex exploded. This is ridiculous. Your work is impeccable. You're one of the best residents I've... It doesn't matter, she shouted. Don't you get it? It doesn't matter how good I am. The mere fact that the rumors exist is enough to ruin my career. Alex looked at her, seeing the pain in her eyes, the way her hands were trembling slightly, and he felt as if someone had just ripped his own heart from his chest. This is my fault. If I'd never let my guard down, if I'd kept my professional distance. Claire, I'm going to fix this, he promised. I'm going to talk to Mackenzie. You're going to what? She interrupted him. Are you going to risk your precious reputation for me? Are you going to admit you actually feel something, or are you going to find a way to keep your hands clean while I pay the price? The words hit him like physical blows, because she was right and they both knew it. It's not that simple. Fair dinkum it is, Claire whispered, wiping her tears. Either you care enough about me to fight for this, for us, or you don't. And I think I already have my answer. She turned away towards her car, and Alex stood in the car park, watching her leave and hating himself more than he'd ever thought possible. What kind of man am I? He asked himself, watching her car's taillights disappear into the night. What kind of coward allows the woman he loves to pay the price for his own cowardice? And there it was, finally admitted, even if only to himself. He loved her. He loved her, and he had lost her by being exactly the coward she'd said he was. Claire didn't sleep that night. She stayed up staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the last few months, every conversation, every look, every accidental touch that had led her to this breaking point. How did I let this happen? She asked herself, wiping away new tears that seemed to have no intention of stopping. How could I be so stupid as to fall in love with someone who could never love me back? At 5 a.m, she made a decision that broke her heart, but she knew was necessary. She would apply for a transfer to another hospital. She couldn't keep doing this, working next to Alex, pretending she felt nothing when every fiber of her being screamed for him. In the apartment next door, Alex hadn't closed his eyes either. He had stood by his living room window, watching the lights of Melbourne, thinking about how his perfectly ordered life had been turned into emotional chaos in a matter of weeks. I love her, he admitted to himself again, savoring the words he'd never thought he'd say. I love her laugh, I love her intelligence, I love the way she challenges everything I thought I knew about myself. But loving someone meant more than just feeling. It meant acting. It meant fighting. And what have I done? I've run like a coward. At 6 a.m, he showered, got dressed, and headed to the hospital with a determination he hadn't felt in years. His first stop was Dr. Mackenzie's office. "Dr. Vance?" Mackenzie greeted, looking up from his papers. "You're early, even for you." "I need to talk to you about Dr. Morrison," Alex said without preamble. Mackenzie leaned back in his chair, studying Alex with shrewd eyes. "Ah, yes, the rumors. Most unfortunate." "They are lies," Alex stated firmly. "Dr. Morrison is an exemplary professional. Her work is impeccable. Her ethics are unimpeachable. Any suggestion to the contrary is completely unfounded." "Alex," Mackenzie said softly, "we know you're very protective of your residents, but in this case, an exceptional doctor is being punished for baseless gossip," Alex interrupted, "and that is unacceptable." Mackenzie studied him for a moment longer. "Is there something you need to tell me, Alex?" Alex stood still. This was it, the moment of truth. He could lie, keep his professional facade intact, and let Claire pay the price. Or he could be honest and risk everything for her. "For the first time in my life, I'm going to choose love over fear." "Yes," he said, his voice firm and clear, "I'm in love with her." The silence in the office was absolute. "I see," Mackenzie finally murmured. "That complicates things." "It doesn't have to," Alex replied. "My personal relationship with Dr. Morrison doesn't compromise my professional judgment. If anything, it makes me more aware of maintaining the highest standards because I don't want anyone to question her competence based on our mutual feelings." Mutual feelings? Alex felt a pang of pain remembering the look on Claire's face the night before. If she even still feels something for me after the way I treated her. "Alex," Mackenzie said slowly, "I understand your position, but hospital rules prohibit relationships between direct supervisors and subordinates," Alex quoted. "If Dr. Morrison transfers to another department, or if I resign my position as her direct supervisor, that rule no longer applies." Mackenzie leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "Are you willing to do that?" "I am willing to do whatever is necessary to protect Dr. Morrison's career," Alex responded without hesitation, "even if that means resigning my position, even if it's already too late to get her back," he thought. But he didn't say that out loud. While Alex was battling with his conscience and hospital policy, Claire was in the cafeteria, distractedly stirring her coffee while reading transfer forms on her laptop. "Are you leaving?" Claire looked up to find Nurse Pam, who was looking at her with a worried expression. "Rumors travel fast," Claire mumbled bitterly. "Honey," Pam said, sitting down opposite her, "can I give you some advice from someone who's worked in hospitals for 20 years? Claire nodded, grateful for any wisdom that could help her. "Rumors come and go, but doctors like you are rare, Don't let the gossips ruin something you've worked so hard to achieve. It's not that simple, Claire sighed. It's more complicated than just gossip. Pam studied her with those wise eyes. Does it have anything to do with a certain cardiothoracic surgeon who's been walking the halls like a lost soul since yesterday? Alex is... Claire felt her heart flutter despite everything. I don't know what you're talking about, she murmured. Of course not, Pam smiled. But if I were you, I wouldn't make any drastic decisions until I'm sure I know all the facts. Before Claire could ask what she meant, her pager went off. Emergency in OR 3. She ran towards the surgical area, and her heart stopped when she saw Alex coming out of Mackenzie's office. Their eyes met across the hallway, and for a moment the world stopped. There was something different in his expression, a determination, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. Claire, he called out, walking towards her, I need to talk to you. Not now, she replied, although her voice lacked the coldness of yesterday. There's an emergency. After the surgery, he insisted. Please. Claire looked at him, seeing something in his eyes that made her traitorous heart jump with hope. All right, she murmured, after. And as they ran together towards the operating theater, neither of them knew that the next few minutes would change everything between them forever. The surgery lasted 4 intense hours. A traffic accident had brought in a young mother of 2 with severe chest trauma, and every minute counted. Claire and Alex worked with the perfect synchronicity they'd developed, their personal differences completely suspended in the face of the urgency of saving a life. Pressure stabilizing, Claire announced, monitoring the vitals. Excellent, Alex murmured, focused on repairing the arterial damage. Your anticipation of complications was spot on, Claire. It was the first genuine compliment she'd received from him since the night in her apartment, and Claire felt that familiar warmth spread through her chest. When they finally closed up the patient, both were exhausted but satisfied. The woman would live to see her children grow up. Good work, Alex said softly as they took off their surgical gloves. Thanks, Claire replied, avoiding his gaze. We work well together. Professionally. The emphasis on the last word wasn't lost on Alex. Claire, about what I need to tell you. Alex, no, she interrupted him. Please, I've already made my decision. Your decision? A terrible coldness gripped Alex's stomach. What decision? Claire took a deep breath, steeling herself. I'm transferring to another hospital. I've already applied for the transfer this morning. The words hit Alex like a physical punch. He felt as if the ground beneath his feet had vanished. You can't do that. Yes, I can, Claire replied, finally looking him in the eyes. And I'm going to. It's better for everyone. No, it's not. Alex stepped closer to her, raw desperation in his voice. Claire, please listen to me. I talked to Mackenzie this morning. Claire frowned, confused. You talked to him, why? Because I told him the truth, Alex responded, his voice trembling slightly. I told him I'm in love with you. Claire's world stopped. The words she'd dreamed of hearing, that she had desperately hoped for, had finally come from his lips. What? She whispered. I told him I love you, Alex repeated, stepping closer. I told him you're the most brilliant doctor I've ever met, that my professional judgment of you is impeccable precisely because I love you enough to maintain the highest standards. Tears began to prick the back of Claire's eyes. Alex, I'm not finished, he interrupted her. I also told him I'm willing to resign my position as your supervisor, if that means you can stay, that I'm willing to risk my career, my reputation, everything, because losing you would be losing the part of me that I never knew existed. Claire looked at him with wide eyes, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. You'd do that? You'd really risk everything? I already did, Alex replied, gently raising his hand to caress her cheek. This morning, when I admitted that I love you, I risked everything. Because you're worth more than any rule, any protocol, any reputation. Claire felt the tears overflow, but for the first time in days, they weren't tears of pain. And what did Mackenzie say? A small smile appeared on Alex's lips. He said there's a position available in the general surgical department, same specialization, different supervisor. If you accept it, there would no longer be a conflict with hospital policy. Is this really happening? Claire felt as if she were dreaming. But your rules, your famous rule about not getting involved with colleagues. To hell with my rules, Alex murmured, leaning in until only centimeters separated them. I've hidden behind those rules for years because I was scared. Scared to feel, scared to be vulnerable, scared to love and be loved. His hands framed her face gently. But you changed everything. From the moment I heard you in that lift, challenging me without even knowing who I was, I knew you were different. I knew you were going to change my life. Alex, Claire whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. I love you too. I love you so much it hurts. Alex's eyes closed for a moment, as if the words were a physical relief. Will you forgive me for being an idiot, for being a coward? Only if you promise me something, Claire replied. Anything. Promise me you'll never hide behind your rules again. Promise me that if we do this, we do it completely, without reservations, without fear. Alex smiled, the first truly happy smile Claire had ever seen on his face. I promise, he murmured, but I need to do something first. What? Instead of answering, Alex leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but Claire didn't move. Instead, she rose on her toes, closing the distance between them. When their lips finally met, it was as if the world exploded in color. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if neither of them could believe it was finally happening. But then it deepened, years of contained tension and denied love pouring into that perfect moment. Claire felt as if she were melting, as if every nerve ending in her body had come alive. Alex's lips were warm and firm, moving against hers with a tenderness that made her tremble. Alex felt as if he could finally breathe after years of holding his breath. Claire was exactly as he'd imagined, sweet, warm, perfect. His hands tangled in her curls, pulling her closer, as if he couldn't bear even the slightest space between them. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Worth the wait, Alex murmured against her forehead. Definitely, Claire whispered, smiling through her happy tears. For the first time in years, the future looked bright and full of infinite possibilities. 2 weeks after the kiss that had changed everything, Claire was organizing her things in her new office in the general surgical department. The view from her window was different, but the feeling of a fresh start was exhilarating. Need a hand with those boxes? Claire turned to find Alex standing in the doorway, carrying 2 coffees and that smile he now reserved just for her. I figured you might need a caffeine hit, he said, walking in and closing the door behind him. Always thinking like a doctor, Claire joked, gratefully accepting the coffee. Thanks. Alex leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her lips. It was something that still surprised her, how natural it felt, after so long of them resisting the attraction between them. How's your first day in the new department? He asked, sitting on the edge of her desk. Good, though I miss working with you, Claire admitted. Dr. Ruiz is competent, but he's not you. Definitely not you, she thought, remembering how she and Alex moved as if they shared a single brain during surgeries. I miss you too, Alex murmured. Yesterday I had to explain to my new resident 3 times how I wanted him to suture, because he just wasn't anticipating my moves like you do. Claire smiled, feeling a familiar warmth in her chest. Maybe we're too in sync for our own good. Maybe, he agreed, taking her hand, but I don't care. Claire's intercom interrupted the moment. Dr. Morrison, you're needed in OR 5 in 15 minutes. On my way, she replied, then looked at Alex with a mischievous smile. Want to come and watch? You're not my supervisor anymore. Are you inviting me to come and admire your work? He asked, standing up and stepping closer. I'm inviting you to come and remember why you fell for such a brilliant doctor. Claire replied cheekily, enjoying the glint that appeared in his eyes. When did I get so brazen, she wondered. Oh, yeah. Since a certain cardiothoracic surgeon told me he loved me. As if I could ever forget, Alex murmured, kissing her again, more deeply this time. Claire melted against him, her hands rising to tangle in his hair. Each kiss felt like a small celebration, a confirmation that they had truly overcome all the obstacles. A knock on the door separated them abruptly. "Claire, are you ready to—" "Oh!" Nurse Pam stopped in the doorway, a knowing smile spreading across her face at the sight of them. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a grin. "Just came to get our new star surgeon." Claire blushed furiously, pulling away from Alex. We're just—" "You were being adorable," Pam finished, "and about time, if you ask me." Alex cleared his throat, trying to regain his professional composure. "Pam, we were hoping you'd—" "Keep this a secret, honey. The whole hospital knows you two are together. The only difference is now it's official, and no one can say anything, because there's no longer a policy conflict." Claire exchanged a look with Alex. "The whole hospital knows?" "Seriously?" Claire asked weakly. "Love, you two have been radiating sexual tension for months. A blind person could have seen you were mad for each other." Alex ran a hand through his hair, a habit Claire had noticed he had when he was flustered. "And what? What are people saying?" Pam shrugged. "Mostly that it was about time the famous Dr. Heartbreaker found someone who could put him in his place." "Put me in my place?" Alex looked at Claire with a raised eyebrow. "Apparently I've got a reputation as a lion tamer," Claire joked. "Only one very specific lion," Pam murmured with a grin. "And now, if you're finished being adorable, we have a surgery to get to." As they walked towards the OR, Alex took Claire's hand briefly. "Are you all right with everyone knowing?" Claire considered the question. Months ago, the idea would have terrified her. Now, surprisingly, it felt liberating. "I'm all right with it," she replied. "Are you?" Alex smiled that smile that completely transformed his face. "I'm more than all right with it. I'm proud." "Proud?" Claire's heart leapt. "Proud of what? Of you, of us, of finding the courage to admit that some rules are worth breaking." Claire felt as if she could fly. This man, this brilliant, complex, formerly impenetrable man, was proud to be with her. "I love you," she murmured, not caring that they were in the middle of the hospital hallway. "I love you too," he replied, kissing her softly on the forehead. As they entered the surgical area, Claire realized that, for the first time in months, there was no tension between them. No secrets, no pretending, just love, mutual respect, and the promise of a future together. Who would have thought that Dr. Heartbreaker would turn out to be the most romantic man in the world? She thought, preparing for surgery with a smile she couldn't wipe off her face. The future had never seemed so bright. 1 month after making their relationship official, Claire and Alex had established a routine that made them smile every morning. Shared breakfasts in her apartment, stolen lunches in the hospital cafeteria, and quiet nights cooking together or just talking until late. It was a Friday night when everything changed. They had just finished an especially challenging surgery, Claire in her department, Alex observing from the gallery, and the adrenaline was still coursing through their veins when they arrived at her apartment. "You did it!" Alex exclaimed, picking her up and spinning her in the doorway. That suture on the right ventricle was absolutely perfect. Claire laughed, her arms around his neck, feeling the euphoria of shared success. "I couldn't have done it without knowing you were there, believing in me." When he set her down, their faces were centimeters apart. The smile on Claire's lips faded slowly when she saw something intense glowing in Alex's gray eyes. "Claire," he murmured, his voice husky, "I love you so much it feels like I can't breathe." How can he say things like that and expect me to keep my composure, Claire thought, feeling as if her entire body was about to melt. "Alex," she whispered, not knowing what else to say. Instead of words, he leaned in and kissed her with an intensity that was completely different from their previous kisses. This wasn't soft or tentative. It was hungry, desperate, filled with months of pent-up desire. Claire responded instantly, her hands tangling in his hair, pressing herself against him as if she couldn't get close enough. She could feel the accelerated rhythm of his heart against hers, the way his hands trembled slightly as they caressed her back. Is this what it feels like to be completely desired, she wondered, lost in the sensation of his lips moving against hers. Alex gently guided her towards the sofa, never breaking the kiss. When they finally separated for air, both were panting. "Claire," he murmured, his forehead resting against hers, "if you want me to stop, tell me now." She looked him in the eyes, seeing vulnerability and desire mixed in equal measure. "I don't want you to stop," she whispered. "I want you, Alex. I want you completely." Did I really just say that? But she didn't regret it. She had said it from the heart. Alex's eyes darkened, but he moved with an exquisite gentleness, as if she were made of the most delicate crystal. "Are you sure?" he asked, his hands caressing her face. "There's no rush, my love. We can wait." The words made her shiver from head to toe. "I'm sure," she replied, bringing her hands to the first button of his shirt. "I've been sure for weeks." What followed was a slow, beautiful dance of mutual discovery. Alex touched her as if she were something precious, his hands exploring every curve with reverence, his lips following the path his fingers traced. "You're beautiful," he murmured against her skin. "So beautiful it hurts." Claire felt tears welling behind her eyes, not from sadness but from a happiness so intense it was almost overwhelming. Alex in turn explored the solidity of his chest, marveling at the way he shivered under her touch. When they finally came together, it was with a tenderness that stole both their breaths. There was no rush, no desperation, just two people who loved each other deeply, discovering new ways to express that love. How can something feel so perfect, Claire thought, lost in the sense of completeness she had never experienced before. Alex moved with her as if they had been made for each other, every movement a silent declaration of love. His eyes never left hers, as if he wanted to memorize every expression, every sigh. "I love you," he murmured again and again, the words like a prayer on his lips. "I love you too," Claire replied, feeling as if she were flying and landing at the same time. Afterward, they lay tangled in her bed with the Melbourne moonlight filtering through the curtains. Claire rested her head on Alex's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his fingers lazily playing with her curls. "That I never imagined I could feel so complete," Claire admitted. "Like I found a part of me I didn't know was missing." Alex tensed slightly, and Claire raised her head to look at him. "What's wrong?" "Nothing bad," he hurried to reassure her. "It's just, I feel exactly the same way, and it scares me a little." "It scares you?" Claire half sat up. "Why does it scare you?" Alex looked at her with a vulnerability that made her hold her breath. "Because I've never felt this way before. I've never needed someone the way I need you, and that's new to me." Claire felt her heart melt for this man who had spent years building walls only to let her tear them down one by one. "Alex," she murmured, caressing his cheek, "you don't have to be scared. I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" he asked, and there was something almost childish in the question that made her want to protect him from all the pain in the world. "I promise," she replied, sealing the promise with a soft kiss. As they fell asleep in each other's arms, neither of them knew that their lives were about to get even more complicated in ways they had never imagined. 6 weeks after their first night together, Claire found herself in her apartment's bathroom, staring at a small plastic stick that had just changed everything. 2 pink lines. No way, she thought, her hands trembling as she reread the pregnancy test instructions for the 3rd time. It has to be a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. The symptoms she'd been ignoring for weeks, the morning sickness she'd put down to stress, the extreme tiredness, the changes in her body, suddenly made perfect sense. She was pregnant. She sank onto the edge of the bathtub, trying to process the news. In a matter of minutes, her perfectly ordered world had been completely transformed. How am I going to tell Alex? Her phone rang, interrupting her panicked thoughts. "Claire?" It was Alex's voice, warm and familiar. "Are you all right? You seemed distracted at the hospital today." How can he sound so normal when my world just exploded? Yeah, I'm fine, she lied, her voice sounding strange even to her own ears. Just tired. Do you want me to grab dinner? We could stay in and watch that movie you wanted to. Dinner? Just the mention of food made her stomach churn. Actually, I'm not very hungry, she murmured. Maybe we could just talk when you get home. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Claire, now you're worrying me. What's wrong? Just come over, please. I need to see you. An hour later, Claire was pacing back and forth in her living room when she heard Alex's key in the door. She had given him a copy of her keys weeks ago, a gesture that had felt so natural at the time, but which now made her feel vulnerable in ways she couldn't explain. Claire, he came in, closing the door behind him. What? He stopped when he saw her expression, his face immediately filling with concern. What happened? Are you sick? Is it your family? Sick. If only it were that simple. Alex, she began, her voice trembling. I need to tell you something, and I don't know how you're going to react. He immediately stepped closer, taking her hands in his. You're scaring me. Whatever it is, we can handle it together. Can we? Can we really handle this together? Claire took a deep breath, gathering all her courage. I'm pregnant. The silence that followed was so complete, Claire could hear her own heart pounding in her ears. Alex stood completely still, his eyes fixed on her face, as if he were trying to process a foreign language. Pregnant, he repeated finally, his voice barely a whisper. Yeah, Claire murmured, studying his face for any clue about what he was thinking. 6 weeks, give or take. Why isn't he saying anything? Why is he looking at me like that? Alex let go of her hands and stepped away, running his fingers through his hair. In that gesture, Claire had learned to recognize when he was overwhelmed. A baby, he murmured as if he were trying out the words. We're going to have a baby. Alex, Claire said softly, I know it's a surprise. It was for me too, but I need to know how you feel about it. He turned to look at her, and Claire could see a storm of emotions in his gray eyes. Shock, fear, something that might have been joy, and something else she couldn't identify. How do I feel? He repeated. I don't know. It's so unexpected. Unexpected? Is that all you have to say? Claire felt tears welling behind her eyes. Alex, I need more than that. I need to know if this is something you want, if you can imagine a future where we're parents together, or if... She couldn't finish the sentence. Alex looked at her, seeing the tears threatening to fall, and something in him broke. He stepped forward quickly, pulling her into his arms. Don't cry, please, he murmured against her hair. Don't cry, it's just a baby, Claire, our baby. Is that something you want? She asked against his chest. Alex pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was filled with a tenderness that made Claire's heart soar. Claire, 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be in love with a stubborn resident with a tendency to challenge my authority, I would have thought they were crazy. Claire laughed through her tears. And now? Now, he said, caressing her face gently, now I can't imagine my life without you. And a baby, our baby, it's terrifying and perfect and completely unexpected, just like everything that's happened between us. Is that a yes? Does that mean you're happy? She asked hopefully. Alex smiled, that transformative smile he reserved just for her. It means I'm terrified and excited and completely overwhelmed, he admitted. But most of all, it means I love you even more for giving us this chance to create something beautiful together. Claire felt as if she could fly. She rose on her tiptoes and kissed him with all the emotion she'd been holding back. I love you, she murmured against his lips, and we're going to be good parents. The best, he agreed, his hands already moving protectively towards her still flat abdomen. Our baby is going to be the most loved kid in the world. As they hugged in the middle of her living room, both of them knew they had crossed another threshold. They were no longer just Alex and Claire, the lovers who had overcome all obstacles. Now they were a family. And that realization was more beautiful than either of them had ever dreamed. 2 weeks after the pregnancy revelation, Claire and Alex were at the gynecologist's office, hands clasped together as they waited to hear their baby's heartbeat for the first time. "Nervous?" Claire whispered, noticing how Alex was drumming his fingers against her thigh. "Terrified," he admitted. "What if something's wrong? What if I'm no good at this whole dad thing?" Claire smiled, bringing their clasped hands to her lips to kiss his knuckles. "Alex, you're the most protective and caring man I know. You're going to be an incredible dad." How can he not see it, she thought, watching how he'd been caring for her in 1,000 small ways since he found out she was pregnant, making sure she ate, insisting she got more rest, reading every book on pregnancy he could find. "Dr. Vance, Dr. Morrison," the nurse called them. "Dr. Serrano will see you now." The ultrasound was a magical moment neither of them would ever forget. When the quick, steady sound of the baby's heart filled the room, Claire felt tears rolling down her cheeks, and when she looked at Alex, she saw he was crying too. "There's our baby," Dr. Serrano murmured, pointing to a tiny shape on the screen. 8 weeks exactly. Everything looks perfect. "Is it real?" Alex whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "Are we really going to have a baby?" "It's very real," the doctor smiled. "Congratulations to you both." They left the office on a cloud of happiness, with an ultrasound photo Alex couldn't stop looking at. "I can't believe something so tiny already has its own heartbeat," he murmured in awe. "Our little miracle," Claire agreed, feeling more in love with him than ever at seeing his paternal amazement. But their bubble of happiness was interrupted when they arrived at the hospital. Dr. Mackenzie was waiting for them with a serious expression. "I need to speak to both of you in my office," he announced without preamble. Claire and Alex exchanged a nervous glance as they followed him. "Sit down," Mackenzie said, closing the door. "It's come to my attention that your relationship has evolved in ways that could affect your careers here." "What?" Claire felt her heart stop. "What are you talking about?" Alex asked, his voice taking on that protective tone Claire had come to know so well. "I'm talking about the rumors of a pregnancy that have reached the hospital administration. And while your relationship no longer violates direct policy, a pregnancy complicates things significantly." Claire felt as if the floor had opened up beneath her feet. How did they find out so fast? "Dr. Mackenzie," she began, but he raised a hand to stop her. "I'm not here to judge your personal decisions. I'm here to discuss the professional realities. Claire, your residency will require intense hours for the next 2 years. A pregnancy and a baby will make that challenging." "I can handle both," Claire stated firmly. "Female doctors have been having babies and successful careers for decades." "And Alex," Mackenzie continued, "your professional reputation, which you've carefully built over years, is now inevitably tied to this situation." Alex tensed, and Claire could see the battle raging on his face. Is he going to choose his career over us? But then he straightened up, took Claire's hand, and spoke with a voice full of determination that surprised her. "Dr. Mackenzie, with all due respect, my professional reputation is based on my competence as a surgeon, not on my personal life. And my personal life includes the woman I love and the baby we're going to have together." "My God," he said it. "Claire is an exceptional doctor," Alex continued. "Her pregnancy doesn't change that. And if the hospital has a problem with doctors who are also parents, then maybe they need to reconsider their priorities." Mackenzie studied them for a long moment. "I see you've made your decision," he said finally. "Very well. But I want to be clear. There will be no special treatment because of your personal relationship. Claire, you will be expected to maintain the same standards as every other resident, pregnant or not." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Claire replied with dignity. "And Alex, any perception of favoritism will be taken very seriously." "Understood," Alex nodded. When they left the office, Claire felt as if they had just survived a storm. "Thank you," she murmured, stopping in the hallway to look at him, "for defending me, for defending us." Alex took her in his arms, not caring who might see them. "Claire, I told you I wasn't going to hide behind my rules anymore. That includes not hiding behind my professional reputation when it comes to protecting my family." My family. The words made her feel as if she could conquer the world. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "About all of this. The baby, dealing with hospital rumors, changing your perfectly ordered life." Alex smiled, bringing a hand to her cheek. "Claire, my life wasn't perfectly ordered before I met you. It was empty. You filled it with color, with laughter, with love, and now with our baby, it's going to be filled with even more love than I ever thought possible." He leaned in and kissed her softly. "I'm more sure of this than anything in my life," he murmured against her lips. "You, me, our baby, we're a family, Claire, and we're going to make this work." As they walked hand in hand down the hospital hallways, Claire realized he was right. They had overcome so many obstacles. His pride, her own fears, hospital policy, rumors, and gossip. A baby wasn't another obstacle. It was their reward for having the courage to fight for their love. The future stretched out before them, bright with infinite possibilities. 8 months later, the afternoon sun filtered through the windows of the apartment Claire and Alex now shared, illuminating a domestic scene that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Claire, with her round 8-month belly, was lying on the sofa with her feet in Alex's lap, who was giving her a gentle massage while reading a medical article. "How's my little dancer today?" Alex murmured, addressing the baby in her belly. As if she had heard her dad's voice, the baby gave a strong kick that made Claire gasp. "I think she recognizes your voice," Claire smiled. "She always moves more when you talk to her." Alex leaned down and kissed her belly softly. "Hello, my love," he whispered to the baby. "Dad can't wait to meet you." How is it possible that this man has become even more attractive as a future father? Claire wondered, watching the tenderness on his face as he talked to their unborn daughter. They had found out it was a girl at the 20-week mark, and Alex had cried tears of pure happiness when the doctor gave them the news. "A little Claire," he had mumbled back then, and she'd had to correct him that the baby would be a mix of both of them. The intercom interrupted their intimate moment. "Expecting anyone?" Alex asked, frowning. "No," Claire replied. "Maybe it's Mrs. Garcia with more food." Their elderly neighbor had adopted the personal mission of ensuring Claire was well fed during the pregnancy, regularly showing up with containers full of homemade stews. But when Alex opened the door, it wasn't Mrs. Garcia. It was a bouquet of flowers so big it almost obscured the person carrying them. "Pam," Claire exclaimed from the sofa, "what are you doing here?" The nurse emerged from behind the flowers with a radiant smile. "I came to check on my favorite medical power couple before the big day," she announced, "and to bring this from the hospital." She placed the flowers on the table and pulled out a card. "It's from all the staff in cardiothoracic surgery. They wanted you to know they miss you and are excited to meet the little princess." Claire felt tears welling behind her eyes. Pregnancy hormones had made her cry over everything lately. But this was different. It was the confirmation that she had found not just love, but also a professional family that cared about her. "You want to stay for dinner?" Alex offered. "I was just about to try and cook something that isn't pasta." Pam laughed. "The famous Dr. Heartbreaker cooking? I've got to see this." "Ex-Dr. Heartbreaker," Claire corrected with a smile. "Now he's just Alex, the man who pampered me throughout my whole pregnancy and who's probably going to be the most overprotective dad in Melbourne." "Guilty as charged," Alex admitted without a hint of regret, sitting down next to Claire and caressing her belly. "My family deserves all the pampering in the world." My family. Claire would never get tired of hearing those words. Later that night, after Pam had left with stories to tell about the domesticated Alex, Claire and Alex were lying in their bed with her snuggled against his chest. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sensing she was awake. "How everything changed," Claire murmured. "A year ago, you were Dr. Heartbreaker, the cold man everyone feared. I was just a resident trying to prove she could make it in a man's world. And now," Claire smiled against his chest, "now you're the man who brings me ginger tea when I have morning sickness, who's read every baby book in Melbourne, and who talks to our daughter about heart surgeries like they're fairy tales." Alex laughed softly. "And you're the woman who taught me that having an open heart isn't a weakness, but the greatest strength." who showed me that love isn't something to be feared, but something to be celebrated. They were silent for a moment, each lost in their thoughts. Alex, Claire said finally, do you ever regret it, breaking all your rules for me? He moved so he could look her in the eyes. Claire, my love, my rules kept me safe for years, but they also kept me empty. You didn't break my rules. You saved me from a meaningless life. He kissed her softly, a kiss full of all the love and gratitude he couldn't express in words. I love you, he murmured. You and our little one, more than words can say. We love you too, Claire replied, feeling a strong kick as if the baby were confirming her words. As they fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms in the Melbourne darkness, neither of them knew exactly what the future held, but they knew that whatever it was, they would face it together. The Dr. Heartbreaker had died to make way for something much better, a man who had learned that hearts aren't made to be kept closed, but to open up to infinite love. And in a few short weeks, when their little daughter came into the world, that heart would expand even more, enough to hold all the love a family can create. Melbourne slept that night under a sky full of stars, unaware that in a small Fitzroy apartment, two hearts that were once broken now beat as one, completely healed by the transformative power of true love. If you loved this story, why not share it with a mate who needs a bit of inspiration? And if you want to keep hearing true emotional tales like this, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Together, we can rewrite our own amazing stories.